Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, we are picking up with the Marauders. Marauders issue number 2. Here's the thing, I love Marauders. Like, I love what's going on with the Marauders. It's awesome, and it's an absolute blast. Like, I'm glad to see they're kind of doing that, right? Like, I'm glad to see that each individual title as part of Dawn of X has its own kind of like tone, right? Like its own feel. It's one of the things that's very easy to mess up, and it's one of the things that's very easy to lose, right? Like where you launch a title and they all feel the same, right? Like that was a problem with Marvel in the 90s. Like everything in the 90s felt the same. I mean, some of it was kind of cool, but everything kind of felt the same. And so the cool thing about this is that each one of the stories kind of had their own little tone here, their own kind of system going on. That when it comes to this particular story, what we had picked up with in the last video is that basically Kitty Pryde had formed her own group, right? She was basically the Marauders and just kind of going out. And the initial plan there really seemed for her to just kind of figure out what the nature and function of her team was. Now, what this does is kind of give us an answer to that and basically tell us what's going forward from there. But the idea is that this initially picks up really with a conversation between Emma Frost and what looks like the Stepford Cuckoos. And initially it's just kind of like, okay, like they basically decline her offer, and she makes reference to something called the Lord Imperial. Now, the way this works here is, remember, there's always kind of a hierarchy when it comes to these different positions within the various organizations that exist out there, right? The only exception to that is the Quiet Council, right? The Quiet Council is kind of split up into different factions, different groups, but each of them all kind of have an equal power, but they all sort of run their own little area. But there's no kind of like overseer for it all. I guess you could argue that it's more McTaggart, but she seems really hands-off. We don't really know exactly what all she's doing aside from just simply seeming to kind of guide people. Instead, when it comes to this, and it's kind of a break away from tradition, the Hellfire Trading Company basically has, or at least what they're looking for, is a Lord Imperial, which oversees the entire Hellfire Trading Company. And that's a breakaway from tradition, because remember, the Hellfire Club has historically been this organization that for the most part, the Inner Circle wasn't really known by a lot of people. Most people didn't know the Inner Circle existed at all. And for the most part, the Inner Circle used this kind of anonymity combined with its vast wealth to basically influence global policy in its favor, right? To not necessarily dominate the world, but to basically amass a lot of money and power and influence. And so having like an individual who will reside over all of them, it's kind of intriguing here. It's pretty interesting to see what direction that's going to take. But you know, with the Stepford Cuckoos seemingly turning down this offer, presumably for the Lord Imperial, if not for the position of the Red King or Red Queen, then what it does is it basically jumps over to Sebastian Shaw. Now remember, the idea behind this is that the Hellfire Trading Company operates in two fronts. The first is the front-facing aspect of it, and the second is the black market. And the reason why is because in order for Krakoa to generate income, it basically has to provide a good or a service that people want to buy. And that's why the idea of Krakoa kind of manufacturing these drugs or these substances that can like add years onto your life or can cure any kind of mental disease or anything like that are being offered, right? Because it's basically kind of like a pharmaceutical industry that's being offered by mutants that just crushes anything that's being offered by, you know, any existing major market that's out there right now, right? Like no pharmaceutical company out there can compete with what it is that Krakoa has, and it's why they're dominating the market. But what you have out there are countries that by virtue of their population will basically say, yes, we support Krakoa and we do want to take part in the various drugs and things they have that can improve the lives of our citizens. Then you have those countries who choose not to support them. Now, some countries choose not to support Krakoa because of the fact that like if the leader of the country chose to, the people would revolt and they would basically kill the leader and all the people in power and put somebody in there who doesn't support Krakoa, or because the leader doesn't want to, right? They're like a dictator that rules their country with an iron fist and they don't care what the people want. And so the idea here is that for those countries that basically support Krakoa, that's where Emma Frost comes in, right? She basically says, okay, we're going to lead all these different things to this country. We're going to give them, you know, the various medicines and supplies of Krakoa, which of course they're going to pay for the black market aspect. Basically those countries that for whatever reason cannot publicly support Krakoa, but still want access to all their medicines, they can buy them through the black market. And Sebastian Shaw is the one who's supposed to be providing that. What Sebastian Shaw has been doing is actually deviating out of his line. He's been going to like countries out there that basically support Krakoa and then providing them with medical supplies or providing them with the kind of things that Krakoa can offer, kind of deviating out of his lane. And so as a result of that, Kitty Pryde really at the moment seems to serve as a kind of checks and balance, right? In this instance, it was basically like, okay, things have kind of gone awry. Kitty Pryde's team was sent in and they're basically going to seize the ship of Sebastian Shaw on the orders of Emma Frost. And it's one of these things where it's kind of like stay in your lane, do what you're supposed to do. Otherwise, this is going to happen time and time again. And you need that, right? Like you need that kind of system in place. If it was just kind of like, okay, so we're like the Hellfire Trading Company, just go ahead and do whatever you want to, there'd be no order order and no structure. And everything that exists in Krakoa in terms of the role the mutants play, the kind of things they provide, and how they more or less manipulate the world markets is really done by maintaining order and structure. It has to function that way. Otherwise, everything they've built on a financial aspect comes crashing down. And so what this ends up doing is it actually ends up picking up with the boat of Sebastian Shaw, which is actually being led by Batroc the Leaper. Now, Batroc the Leaper, he was a cool guy, right? Like he was an old school Captain America villain. He did, what was he? I think it was, he was a French kickboxer. He was awesome. Like it was fun to watch his stories where he would like fight Captain America. Like it was fun to read those comics from back in the day. They don't really do those too much anymore. But that's the cool thing about this is that Kitty Pryde is kind of, or at least her Marauders are kind of a Swiss Army knife, so to speak, for the mutant nation of Krakoa. Insofar as what they're doing here is they basically kind of maintain the order of things insofar as Sebastian Shaw, or ensuring Sebastian Shaw's vessels only go to black markets. But then they're also liberating mutants from countries that won't let mutants leave in order to go to Krakoa, right? So they're kind of covering a bunch of different things. But what ends up happening here is that once Kitty Pryde and all of them finally get onto the vessel itself, they essentially sink it. Which is kind of a funny thing. And Batroc and them can't really do a whole lot to stop her. I mean, that's one of the things that was established in the previous issue of the Marauders is Kitty Pryde like running in and like literally a lone gunman, right? Her ability to phase through all kinds of things basically makes her seemingly unstoppable. But in turn, like once the ship is sunk, they basically say, hey, look, here's our new vessel. It's a great big huge yacht. It's like equipped with weapons and all kinds of crazy stuff. But basically what you're getting here is kind of this pirate life. Now, of course, Emma Frost basically chimes into Sebastian Shaw and says, hey, look, so like we basically sunk your ship, so stay in your lane and don't deviate again. Otherwise, you're going to get more of the same. And that's kind of the funny thing is Sebastian Shaw can't really stop it, right? I mean, there's really nothing he can do here because he's the one that erred. Say he says like, I want to call together a meeting of the Quiet Council. And basically they say, okay, what's your case, Sebastian? It's like, well, I've been deviating away from my task. Instead of providing, you know, the things that we have, the goods and services that we have to the black market, I've been going to like the public markets, which is what Emma Frost is supposed to do, but I've been doing it instead. And so basically we're doubling up and we're not really serving the black markets. I'm not doing my job. And like, she sunk my ship because of it. She punished me for it. And that's a problem. I mean, how do you justify that, right? Like, how do you make that case? Like, I wasn't doing my job and I was penalized for it. That's like the most entitled attitude ever. It's like, if you're not doing your job, well, then maybe we'll just get somebody to replace you, like somebody who can do your job. Like, it's a funny little thing here, but like, that's literally the spot that he's in. And this is the important thing to understand about Emma Frost, right? The way that she depicts this in this conversation with Sebastian Shaw, the way that she depicts this is the way the game is going to be played. This is how it's going to function. You can play just like we tell you. You could do what we tell you to, or we can replace you with somebody who will. Emma Frost does not care. And that's the coolest thing about her characters. Emma Frost always kind of had this confidence, this kind of haughty, hubris attitude of like, I can do what I want to and nobody can get in my way, right? Like there are two kinds of people in this world, the ones that I can work with and the ones who get in my way. And if you get in my way, then I'll just have you spend the rest of your life you're believing you're a dog and just barking and carrying on. Now, following this, Kitty Pryde and her group basically travel to Taipei. And here's a cool thing about this. This is why I love this so much. They're literally pirates, right? Like they do a pirate's thing, right? They're like, okay, so like we're going to travel to Taipei and we're going to meet with the contact we're supposed to meet here. And then like once they end up realizing it's Bishop's like, your job is to stay here until you're told who it is that you want to meet with. And they basically go into like a local tattoo parlor and get tattoos and they go drink. It looks like the most fun ever. Dude, I'd be like, dude, this is going to be awesome. It's like a party on the high seas. But here's the other thing to bear in mind too, is this is Kitty Pryde probably at her best. If I'm being honest, as a person who's been reading as long as I have, I think this is Kitty Pryde, probably some of the best writing for her character that I've seen in a long time. Even when, like after All New, All Different Marvel, when she was leader of the X-Men, the problem is that during that time, the X-Men stories sucked, right? Because Marvel was trying to tank the X-Men in order to boost the Inhumans and nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted the X-Men. And so kind of like giving us that version of Kitty Pryde in that leadership role combined with like amazing storytelling is awesome, right? Like she's got like this broken nose with this bandage on her nose. She's got like this kind of flannel thing around her neck. She ends up stealing like this cloak, you know, and it's amazing because she basically has like these tattoos on her fingers that say hold fast. She looks like a pirate, but ultimately they end up finding out the person they're supposed to meet is a guy named Gateway. Now Gateway is an old school character, right? Gateway's been around, since like Uncanny X-Men 229. And the idea behind this was that Gateway was originally used by a group called the Reavers. Now the Reavers are something you guys have probably heard of before. And they were basically kind of like this cyborg faction that basically like used Gateway who could teleport people as a means to like loot and plunder. He's just like from Australia. I think he's an Aborigine. I'm not going to swear to that though. And like nothing's known about this guy's past. We don't even know what his real name is, right? Like all you know is that he's referred to as Gateway because that's the name the Reavers gave him. Ultimately, over the years, he ended up siding against the Reavers, joined the X-Men, and became a huge part of the team for a long, long time. But he's there to teleport them to where it is that they're supposed to go. And then the place they're teleporting to is actually to this great big huge yacht, this like like outfitted with like cannons and stuff like that. Like it's literally this multi-million-dollar luxury yacht that's been outfitted, like retrofitted with like all these weapons and different things. But the other part of it is that Emma Frost has basically removed Sebastian Shaw's ability to determine who's going to be the Red King or the Red Queen as part of the Trinity, more or less, of the Hellfire Trading Company. Now, of course, this pisses Sebastian Shaw off to no end, but at the end of the day, like, he overplayed his hand. He thought he could basically kind of get out there and do his own thing, sort of step outside the bounds that have been created for him, and ultimately he's paying the price, right? That's the price that gets paid for the role that he's played here. And so as a result of that, what ends up going on here is basically like Emma Frost is like, well, our new Red Queen is here, and that's when you end up finding out that it's Kitty Pryde. And can we all just admit that Kitty Pryde dressed as a pirate looks amazing? She looks amazing as a pirate. Dude, it's one of the coolest outfits. Like, it's one of the coolest versions of Kitty Pryde that I've ever seen. It looks straight out of Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Like X-Men of the Caribbean. It looks awesome. Jerry Dugan still got it, man. Like, you go and you read stories like Infinity Wars, and it's like, okay, man, what was even going on? And even like with his Guardians of the Galaxy run to a degree, it's like, I'm not really feeling it. But like looking at his handling of Marauders, dude, Jerry Dugan still got it, man. Like, it's awesome. If you're not reading it, you're sorely missing out. It's not even about like crazy plot threads or anything like that. It's just good old-fashioned fun. And like, you need a comic like that as part of Dawn of X. Just a good old-fashioned fun comic book to read. Now, I'm sure the plots will get more complicated as time goes on and the threats will become more significant, but like, if they're going to be invading, like showing up on the doorstep of countries, so to speak, and basically saying like, we're going to free mutants, or they're going to be fighting off various forces in the high seas, they're going to need a vessel to do it. And having a multi-million-dollar yacht outfitted with cannons, it's basically like a luxury battleship, is awesome. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.